Arsenal play West Ham this Saturday after Liverpool have left the title door ajar. Or did they? That's the question that is on every Arsenal's fans' lips, as well as who will play up front, Mikel Merino or Leandro Trossard. Let's get into it. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. Lost my voice there doing the intro, that doesn't usually happen. I hope you're well. As you heard at the top, we are going to be talking title challenge, we are going to be talking West Ham preview, and I'm also going to talk about Champions League opponents, because since the last time I spoke to you, a lot has happened, games have happened, important matches in Arsenal's season has happened, and I want to talk a little bit about them before we get into the West Ham match. As always, before I start, I hope wherever you are listening from, you are well and life is treating you well and you are looking forward to a weekend which is hopefully, if you're in the UK, a slightly warmer weekend than we have been having. It has been miserable for weeks and months, hasn't it? So I'm looking forward to a few more degrees on that dial, although the wind is supposed to be crazy, so I'm not sure if it'll feel like that. But, maybe there is sign of spring in the air and a kind of glance towards maybe a summer title charge. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Let's get into it then. I'm going to start with the Champions League opponents and talk about the Liverpool result before a short break, and then we're going to come back and preview. That's the word I'm looking for. We're going to preview the West Ham game, which we obviously have tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Very excited for that. I like West Ham games. Don't know why. Probably because we've got a record of scoring a lot of goals against them. But we'll come on to that. First thing I want to talk about is, since I last spoke to you guys, we know that our Champions League possible opponents have been cut in half. And incredibly, in a season where I feel like we've had all terrible scheduling and we've had injuries and red cards and all of this stuff that we keep going on about, and I won't rehash here, but incredibly we've had a bit of good luck, I think. AC Milan and Juventus have both been knocked out, so our total kind of possible opponents before the playoffs were AC Milan, Juventus, PSV and Feyenoord. And I think if you ask most Arsenal fans, the team they really didn't want to have to play was AC Milan, followed by Juventus, and then you'd take a pick of PSV and Feyenoord. Incredibly, both of the two most difficult options are out. And I think that's given me 2 reflections. One, maybe PSV and Feyenoord are not as bad as we think, especially Feyenoord, who knocked out Milan. I think Milan are probably a really good team and the strongest of that 4, so very interesting that they managed to do that. And obviously Juve aren't having the best season, but they're still no pushovers. So fantastic for PSV to be able to do that. I think the most important thing is that we avoided the San Siro, because those games come either side of Manchester United and have Chelsea following them. And to throw a trip to the San Siro in there, I mean, I'd back us to beat any of those 4 teams, to be honest. I think we're plenty good enough to beat Juventus, AC Milan, especially over 2 legs, and definitely good enough for PSV Feyenoord. I just really didn't want to go to one of those big Italian stadiums in Turin or the San Siro. I didn't want to have to go there. Like, that is not... Obviously, I'm not going, but I didn't want the players to have to go there and play. So really good that we got those out of the way. And PSV and Feyenoord, a little bit closer to home, less travelling, and maybe slightly less emotional, because the San Siro especially has these incredible European night connotations to it, and we're going to have to play players like Ethan Nwaneri. Do we want to throw him out in the San Siro? I know we had the opportunity to do it against Inter earlier in the year, and I'm glad we didn't start him in that game, because I think that's too much to put on a 17-year-old. So I'm pleased that whilst we need players like Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly, we are probably going to be able to take them to environments that are not easy. I'm not going to say that, because Dutch fans make a racket. They love their football, but it's not the San Siro. That's what I think is the major benefit of this. In terms of Feyenoord, very interesting developments for them. They're currently 4th in the Dutch Eredivisie with 40 points, way off the pace, 14 points behind first. Not going to win the league this year. So interestingly, they have changed their manager in the last kind of 24, 48 hours and appointed our friend, or not friend, as you may look on it, Robin van Persie. So it could be a Mikel Arteta, Robin van Persie showdown in the round of 16, which would make me feel very, very old, first and foremost, but would be a really interesting one for Arsenal fans from an emotional point of view. Again, I kind of hope we avoid that narrative, even though PSV are 12 points better off in the Eredivisie than Feyenoord. I kind of think we need to avoid narratives wherever we can, and we don't want to give teams, and especially former players, their big day out, as we love to do. So let's not do that. And hopefully we get PSV. PSV, in contrast, are second, 52 points, 2 points behind the leaders, and are right in their title race. They knocked out Juve with an aggregate score of 4-3. So it's good news, I think, overall. We've avoided the two we really didn't want to play, avoided some difficult stadiums, and we now have maybe a slightly more favourable run of fixtures through that difficult spot. We'll obviously play West Ham, we'll play Nottingham Forest away. That's a hugely tough game. And then we will have a weekend off because it's an FA Cup weekend, and we will go into a run that could be, I mean, every run at the moment season defining, isn't it? So it feels like a silly thing to say, but it feels like a chunk we have to get through unscathed. It'll be the first leg, Manchester United, the second leg, and then Chelsea. Manchester United and Chelsea are not playing great, but I think we need to avoid a slip-up. We need to avoid one of those, crazy things that can happen in matches between the big sixes. So let's hope we do that. It's a difficult run coming up, but let's focus on West Ham before that. Liverpool then. Our title rivals, they are currently 8 points clear, but they've played a game more, so it'll be 5 if we win our game in hand, which I think will happen mid-March, as they have the Carabao Cup final against Newcastle, of course, to play on March the 16th. So it'll be that weekend that we know whether we're 5 points or 8 points, or hopefully even closer, to be fair, if there's more errors coming Liverpool's way. They have Manchester City this Sunday, and I'm sensing for the first time this year, I'm sensing a nervousness. Really, really interesting. I watched the Wolves game, and I thought that was a little bit nervy, and they really struggled to perform well in the second half. They got fairly lucky in the first half. I didn't put myself through watching the Villa game. I watched Manchester City Real Madrid instead, and I'm glad I did. Kylian Mbappe is some player, by the way. And the reason I didn't watch it is because I just felt like Villa were going to roll over for them. But it ended up, from the highlights and what I've seen so far, being a nervy game. Villa could have won it with the last moments with Donyell Marlin, ex-Arsenal Academy guy, actually. That would have been great. With Donyell Marlin hitting the post. So Villa could have won it. And as well, Liverpool's 2 goals. No one's really talking about this, but they were jammy. The first one is inexplicable. The defender just forgets which team he's playing against. And then, a big deflection for the second one in another world. That is a comfortable win for Aston Villa. And we are looking at a title race definitely back on. They have to play Manchester City this weekend. Like I said, Arne Slot has said, we're not thinking about Arsenal. We are focused on Manchester City. But he's said that now. He said that, and I feel like that's just going to put in the back of players and fans' minds. Oh, maybe we should be thinking about Arsenal. It's there now from a position where there's been multiple times where Liverpool could have gone to 9 points. I think 9 or 10, 11 points, and it hasn't happened for them for one reason or another. Either we've produced a big result to keep pace, or we've dropped points at the same time and stuff like that. I think they're just starting to feel it. In a very interesting quote, Arne Slot kind of came out and had a go at Darwin Núñez. Not about his miss. He said he can accept the misses, but he said after the chance it wasn't the usual Darwin that works his arse off and helps the team. I think he was too disappointed. So he criticised his player in the wake of that Aston Villa game and in the wake of his big miss. I think it was a 0.89 XG, which for context is 0.1 XG higher than the average penalty XG. So that's incredible, really. this is the first time I think Arne Slot has really he hasn't gone for him, but shown something about his players, maybe a crack about his players. Liverpool have been this kind of perfect bubble this year. Apart from a Konate injury and the Alisson injury, they've not really had anything go wrong. They've had no major defeats apart from Nottingham Forest. No one's looking at them going, oh, they've slipped up here or they've slipped up there. They've been borderline perfect. But they've only won one in the last 4, I think, in all competitions. And they just look like there might be the odd crack. And maybe Arne Slot talking about his player in a negative light in the media is just those frays and those pressures starting to show. It's something that we've seen with managers, ad infinitum. It just keeps coming back, this pressure, as it builds towards the end of a title run-in or maybe even a relegation fight as well. As the pressure starts to build, they just start to get to this point where their behaviour in press conferences is not overtly wrong, or I think what he said is fine. Actually, you can say that about a player in public, but they've gone from this kind of perfect family harmony, nothing's going wrong, everything's perfect from the outside, to maybe just a crack, and they've got to play Manchester City away. Manchester City are obviously not a great team, but they are still plenty good enough to get a draw at home versus Liverpool. And I tell you what, if that gets to a point where there's some significant times gone on the match clock, 60, 65 minutes, and Liverpool are not right there winning it, don't have a comfortable lead, there will be nerves from that away end, and the players will start to feel that. So, Manchester City have dealt us some pain over the previous few years. We need them to help us out here. It would be massive if they could, but of course Liverpool have Newcastle afterwards, and again, same scenario. Newcastle have dealt us plenty of pain. Time for them to do us a favour, I think. Alexander Isak, do your best. Get yourself your move to Arsenal by scoring a hat-trick against Liverpool when you go to Anfield in a couple of weeks' time. That will obviously be a precursor for the Carabao Cup final, so both teams will really, really want to win that. In my opinion, I'm still not getting my hopes up. Even if we win our game in hand and it's 5 points, I think there'll only be sort of, 13 games, 12, 13 games left. That's a lot for us to say we're going to amass basically 6 more points than Liverpool during that time. And as well, we have to get at Anfield. So that's a massive 6-pointer at a place where we've not won in years and years. And they'll feel confident every single time they step on the pitch at Anfield, no matter what. I think we need basically an unexpected collapse from Liverpool to make sure that Anfield game is, not in our hands, but maybe we're ahead at that point and we could take a draw or something like that. Obviously, if we go there and we need a win, that's still an opportunity, and I would still back the boys to do it. But it will be a sizable task, and one that might be quite difficult without players like Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus. I think, is it likely that Saka's back at full speed and full fitness at that point? Maybe, but he certainly won't be his full self. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I think we still need a big Liverpool collapse. It could happen over the next 2 game weeks. They could take 0 points from the next 2 game weeks, and we could be 1 point clear by the time we play our game in hand. So, that can absolutely happen. That's not out of the realms of possibility. But knowing what I know about Liverpool this year, I'm just kind of quietly hopeful, but not expectant, I guess, is where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk more about Arsenal, because we've spoken a lot about our opponents in the first half, and I'm going to speak specifically about the West Ham game. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game, and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Welcome back to this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. So let's talk about the West Ham game. We play them tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And I always get excited for West Ham games. I don't know why. I think it's primarily because we've scored a lot of goals against them recently. Earlier in this season, we scored 5 against them. Of course, it was that crazy game where we kind of rushed into a first half 4-0 lead, and then 2 absolute wonder goals pegged us back, really. The Emerson goal especially was the free kick in off the bar, I think it was. It was an incredible game. We obviously ended up kind of calming that scenario down and winning 5-2, so no dramas. We put 6 past them last year, I think, so there's plenty to be hopeful about in this game, but we can't afford a banana skin. We have still, we had the great feeling with Mikel Merino and the Leicester game and the late victory, but we have still got attacking issues in terms of team selection, in terms of where our goals are going to come from. So I guess that's the place to start. Who is going to play up front for us? I think there's only 2 options. There's Leandro Trossard with Raheem Sterling starting out left, or there's Mikel Merino from the start. And I think there's probably reservations about that, even though Mikel Merino, I would say, is a better player, because we're talking about Raheem Sterling coming out, right? We're not talking about Leandro Trossard coming out. He will play on the left wing, or he will play down the middle, and then it will either be one of Raheem Sterling or Mikel Merino in that front line. For me, so the worries is, can Merino do it from the start? Can he do it for 90 minutes? It's an interesting one, isn't it? Especially with West Ham, they've tended to play 3 at the back under Graham Potter. They didn't against Brentford, but in their previous couple of games, they've played 3 at the back with a Kilman or a Mavropanos in the middle, and then Kufal and their left back, can't remember what his name is, kind of either side. And yeah, it's been an interesting one in terms of, we got a lot of joy from crosses against Leicester when Mikel Merino came on. Would we have the same against a 3 at the back system? I don't know. So that's something we need to consider. For me, it's obvious. For me, you absolutely have to play Mikel Merino from the start. And I'll tell you why. 1, because the rest of the team looked better when he came on. 2, I think Leandro Trossard especially will look better off the left. And they have Aaron Wan-Bissaka on their kind of right-hand side. So for me, I don't think you can put Raheem Sterling up against Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who, for all his shortcomings on the ball, which I think have improved since he went to West Ham, but for all his shortcomings on the ball, he is an absolutely terrific one-on-one defender. So you need a player of Leandro Trossard's quality out there. If we put Raheem Sterling out there, there will be no threat down that side. And we saw against Leicester what that can mean. Mikel Merino offers this stylistic match, so we can play off of him. So I think that's key. We have to go for it. And as well, I think the reservation about whether you play Mikel Merino up front is, well, if you've got Raheem Sterling on the bench, 1, do you lose that player? Does he feel completely kind of cut off from the group? As a Premier League winning, Champions League winning forward, playing in a team, he's only 30 years old, playing in a team that have basically no forwards, no senior forwards, you'd expect to get a game. So if we go and play our kind of left 8, second choice left 8 in the forward line rather than him, do we lose him? Do we completely cut him off from the group? That's an understandable worry, I think. But also the other worry is, if you've only got Raheem Sterling on the bench, where's your game-changing threat? And this is where I have an interesting idea, in the sense of if we keep Merino on the bench, you've got a game-changing threat. Yes, you can bring someone on up front and change the game that way. But for me, you have to start with your best 11. You have to start with the team that you think is going to, especially this time of year, get you 3 points from the start, and then you bring players on to rest players, rather than go, okay, we're going to hold something back and try and impact the game from the bench. The other reason I think it will be fine is because there's Kieran Tierney. And this is a weird one, right? But we have seen previously this year, when Martin Ødegaard was out, we saw a system where sort of a 4-2-4 or a 4-4-2 or a 4-box-2, whatever you want to call it, where Trossard and Havertz kind of played up front as the 2 high parts of that box, with Rice and Partey as the lower parts of that box. And I actually think if we want to change the game, we could go from our 4-3-3 and we could put Trossard and Merino up front together, go Rice and Partey or Rice and Ødegaard in midfield, depending on individual performances, and throw Kieran Tierney on at left wing. Because when Kieran Tierney comes on, he puts in some fantastic crosses. And if we need to change the game, I would rather us do that. I would rather than bringing on Raheem Sterling as someone who just loses the ball, never really beats his man. I'd rather we put Kieran Tierney on and have him swing crosses in and try and get at Mikel Merino with Leandro Trossard buzzing in and around him, picking up scraps. Obviously, I hope we don't need that. I hope from the start we win and we don't need to make any changes. I'm recording this pod super early, so I don't know the team news, but this is how I would line up, considering, hoping that everything is all fit. Everyone is all fit, I should say. Raya in goal, Timber at right back. I think we want to get Ben White back in, but probably need to do that a bit slowly. So maybe Ben White off the bench. Saliba, Gabriel, obvious. I'd go Calafiori at left back. I would. I love Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think he's brilliant, but he is a bit more of a control player. And I think Calafiori can offer a good amount of control, but also offers that marauding threat down the left-hand side. So I would bring him in now. Rice, Partey, Ødegaard in midfield. Nwaneri, Merino, Trossard up front. And I think that left-hand side is way more threatening, right? Timber and Nwaneri is a threat on the right. The left-hand side, if it's Miles Lewis-Skelly and Sterling, Miles Lewis-Skelly, brilliant player, more control focused, like I said. Sterling offering nothing. Calafiori and Trossard offers so much more danger to West Ham and Aaron Wan-Bissaka down that right-hand side. So I think we have to go with that lineup. The only change I would make is if he is really, really super fit and fine, maybe you put Ben White in for Jurrien Timber, but would I risk it? Probably not. And I wouldn't mind if it was Miles Lewis-Skelly and Trossard down the left. I just don't think you can go for a scenario where it's Miles Lewis-Skelly and Sterling. One of those players on the left has to offer a threat, because we didn't do that against Leicester. So, yeah, really important we do that. In terms of West Ham, like I mentioned, they're tending to play three at the back under Potter. They've not won since the 14th of January, I believe, which was Potter's first game, a 3-2 win versus Fulham. They've had losses to Palace, Chelsea and Brentford since, with a draw against Villa. So they haven't enjoyed London clubs, have they? They have no Lucas Paqueta. He picked up an ankle injury. That is massive. There are three danger men at West Ham, and I'm amazed that they've managed to keep hold of all three of these players, to be honest, because they're far too good to be languishing down at the bottom end of the table where West Ham are. It's Jarrod Bowen, Mohamed Kudus and Lucas Paqueta. Lucas Paqueta was obviously interest of Manchester City. I think it was last summer or the summer before, one of those. But he is not available to play, which means Bowen is kind of their main threat, along with Kudus. Bowen has 10 goal contributions this year, 6 goals, 4 assists. Kudus has their most kind of XG. He hasn't scored as many as that. He's underperformed his XG. It's been interesting since Graham Potter's arrived. I will hold my hands up and say I haven't really watched them since it's changed. However, their possession stats have increased a little bit more, and their XG allowed has come down. So it looks like that three at the back system is working for them. It's giving them a bit more control and stability. But we're at home. We should be beating this West Ham team. And frankly, I mentioned before, we've scored 5, we've scored 6 against West Ham. Is this a game where we should be expecting the same? We have to remember we don't have any forwards. So yes, we've got Nwaneri, yes, we've got Merino, Trossard's doing well off the left, but we have to remember it's not going to be one of those games. And look, if it was a 1-0, we score early and just shut it out, I'm fine with it. We just have to get through now, for me, until Saka's back. If we still had Kai, and we were playing up front with Kai, Nwaneri and Trossard, and those guys had enjoyed this period of reduced games and stuff like that, and they had more freshness, I'd be looking at this thinking we need to go and get some goals here and enjoy ourselves. But for me, if we get 1-0, I'm absolutely fine with it, and just see what happens. I'm going to leave it there because we don't have Mikel Arteta's press conference to talk through, because it's super early when I'm recording this, so apologies for that. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for a good weekend. I'll watch the game and obviously do the review podcast on Sunday morning, as I usually do. So you'll hear all of my thoughts about the game. Then hopefully we will be 5 points behind Liverpool at that point, and hopefully Manchester City can do us a massive favour on the Sunday. yeah, like I said in the middle, if you've enjoyed this podcast or any Arsenal Unfiltered, please consider giving me a follow or leaving a review. It really, really helps me bring you content 3 times a week, and I love doing it. So it's really nice to hear from you guys in the forms of reviews and follows. So yeah, if you've enjoyed it, please go and do that. All that's left to say then is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.